Okay, Chileans are really weird. They celebrate they celebrate like bad things. Like here in America, we celebrate good things. They celebrate like one of their big holidays is a holiday is a battle that they had with the Bolivians, where everybody in the Chilean army died. But they celebrate that because I guess the story was because the head of the Bolivian army wrote a letter to the president of Chile that they fought valiantly or something. So then they made it a holiday. But September 11th is the day that that Pinochet took over Allende, where they had the big coup. And maybe that was a good thing. I guess Allende was like a communist. And I heard their own story about Allende. I had a student, an English student, conversation student, this woman, rich woman. She said her father was one of the top 20 lawyers in the country, and her grandfather was on the Supreme Court. And she said her take of what happened is that Allende, he was elected into office, but he was a communist, I guess. And what he was doing is, this is like in the 60s when they were having the Cuban Communist Revolution, and Che de Guevara was rampaging around, and so so I guess like Allende was this communist, and he was going to try to overthrow. He was kind of like um, Hugo Chavez. He was trying to overthrow all of the rich people in the whole country and annex uh, all of their holdings, all their money, and so he like, but all the rich people banded together and were protesting him. So since they owned everything, they shut down all their businesses in order to shut down the country to encourage a coup. So for like a year or so, there were like the country came to a standstill. There was no supplies anywhere in any of the stores. There was no toilet paper, no food, no nothing. People were in survival mode. And so it was this battle between the government and the rich people. And supposedly, according to this woman, um, Allende had amassed an army of soldiers that were encircling in the process of encircling the entire city with tanks and all this stuff, and they were about to go into the city and murder all of the rich people so that they could annex all of their holdings and make everything like communist country. So and I guess with the help of, what was it called, the Chicago Boys, American guys came down and helped orchestrate, I guess with money and supplies or something, orchestrate the general, Pinochet, to go in there, storm in with his tanks. It was kind of like a one-day civil war, and storm the presidential palace. And anyway, Allende ended up with a bullet in his head. So everybody says he committed suicide. I don't know. And then Pinochet takes over, and so now it's not a democracy or a communist government like Allende supposedly wanted. Now we've got a dictatorship, and Pinochet, who was in league with all the rich people. So the rich people got to keep their power, and in order to keep the communists from rebelling again, he made this law where you couldn't go outside after dark. And I think that law was in effect from 1973. It was September 11th, 1973 that the coup happened until 1988. Maybe for the entire time he was dictator for 17 years. Nobody could go outside after dark. And my wife even remembers one time when she was a little kid, like 3 years old, like she like went outside and her dad like pulled her back in, but she heard a bunch of gunshots and like some guy chasing some other guy. And so I guess because people would like want to gather, the communists would want to gather and have meetings at night because they couldn't during the day because they were working. So they just made it illegal to go outside at night. And they'd have thugs patrolling the streets, making sure nobody's walking the streets at night. And to this day, Chileans are terrified of night. Like they're afraid that if you go out there, you'll get mugged or something, and yeah, it's weird. It's scared of the dark. But um, so yeah. So anyways, yeah, we go to do this September 11th party. And yeah, but after that, I guess this kid lived with us for like, we were roommates for like a month after that, but we weren't talking at all. It was just like him and his friends, and he'd never come over to the apartment. So it was kind of like he gave the apartment to us. But his friend, that girl, was there for 2 months before she moved out. And my friend was there about 1 month until he was like, oh man, stuff's getting too weird between you and your roommate. I'm going to just leave. So I lived with him. And then my friend moved back in for a month because the guy who I rented the apartment from didn't want to give me my deposit money back. He said that like the toilet was leaking and that I had to pay to get it fixed, even though it was his apartment. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just stay here 1 more month on the deposit money. He was like, you can't do that. My daughter's a lawyer, and my girlfriend was there, and she's like, oh yeah, well my friend's a lawyer, and he's like, oh, okay, well let's get it in writing that you're only going to be here a month. So we go up to some like notaria note place, and we're about to sign it. He's like, all right, never mind. You just stay there a month. And so I stayed there a month with my friend. And then when that month was over, we moved into this other place in Bella Vista. And I got this room. It was like bigger than this room. It was about as big as this room, but it was perfectly square. It was a really nice place. Really nice room. And we all shared a bathroom. And I ended up living there, I think like a year and a half. My girlfriend kept trying to get me to move in with her and her family, but her house was a total disaster area. It was totally full of stress. She had a 9-year-old son when I met her who was always screaming and crying, and her dad was like raging alcoholic and everybody. It was just lots of stress, lots of people. Plus her house itself was like, all the windows were busted out. There were these trees that were totally overgrown, and like you had to like duck under them to get to her door, and it was just really ugly. And I don't really like staying in places that are really dilapidated like that. And I kind of liked the tranquility of my own room. And it was in Bella Vista, which is this cool artsy area of town. And I was housemates with two of my friends, my American buddies. So I was hanging, and then one of those guys left, so I was friends with my other buddy, Tony, I'm going to do the kayak trip with. And so I kind of didn't want to like abandon him, you know, because we were sharing the cost of internet and stuff. But anyways, so I was there for like a year and a half. At one point, my mom and my brother came down and visited for 3 weeks, and we went up to. We took the bus up to Thermos de. Oh my God, I can't remember. There are these hot springs up. You go up Cajon de Maipu, this canyon of Maipu, way up in the mountains, and on the side of these really steep hills, they have these terraced hot springs. And one of the pools is so hot nobody can even get in it. If you dip your foot in it, you'll scald it. And so that's kind of the pool that feeds the other pools. And they have these mud bottoms. And oops, I think I'm going to end it at a time.